Eleanor Rigby, let's do this. Today, we're going to go behind the scenes of my arrangement of Eleanor Rigby, take you through my process of making it, and show you some of the tools that I use to make the music I make. If you haven't heard the song, you can find it on Spotify or whatever thing you use to listen to music. So a lot of people are wondering, like, why did you choose Eleanor Rigby? There's a lot of great Beatles songs. Why did you choose this one? Honestly, it was a result of the pandemic. I think the refrain, "Look at all the lonely people," just kept occurring to me over and over as we were going through this. And I thought, you know, it'd be really fun to like do this, involve some of my fans to create a choir and just like give me and all of us something to kind of just do together, make something. Just the way that the song's lyric expresses the feelings that so many are going through, I just thought it was really poignant, and I wanted to see if I could put my own twist on it. So I'm gonna take you through that now. So this arrangement actually started in Finale. Finale looks like this. And the reason that it started in Finale is that there were some ideas that I had that I really wanted to work out kind of vertically where I could see them in the score. For example, like these roaming triads here in the French horns. That's not something that I would typically play on piano, and so I wanted to get that all inputted because I didn't want to limit myself by my piano skills. I'm not a bad piano player, but it's easier for me to be able to think out sort of these lines when I can see them in notation. I'll zoom in here on like this violin line. This is probably not something that I would have played in easily at tempo, but in Finale, I can kind of slow down and think, okay, how is this line gonna structure? How are the bowings gonna work for the violinists? And how is it gonna just kind of come across? And what are the gestures that I need rather than being limited to what I can play on piano? That's one of the real strengths of working in Finale is it kind of gets you out of your primary instrument and kind of lets you see the whole thing vertically and kind of it just gives you like a different way to think about music. I wanted to pay homage to like the original string quartet arrangement from Eleanor Rigby. So you'll see like we have the cellos that are just doing the dun, 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 which is like very reminiscent of that original arrangement. I'll just scroll through some of the Finale here so you can kind of see what that looks like. I love writing in stuff like this. This contrabass thing is kind of, it's called a glissando, or it's just kind of moving down the string. Really hard to program that unless you have really specific samples for it. So easy to write in, and the players, you know, they can just play it so easily, but it's not something you'd be able to represent on a computer. And so if you're thinking in your DAW only, you might not come up with something like that because it just doesn't occur to you when the samples don't sound right doing it. But it's a cool effect in real life. So once I've got things kind of going in Finale, I bring up my DAW of choice, which is Logic for programming. It's where I have all my virtual instruments, orchestra sounds. I love the Spitfire audio libraries, so you'll see them a lot in here. And I just start to kind of demo out the orchestration. And basically the point of making these mock orchestrations for me is to just get a handle on like, okay, is this the emotion that I want in this moment? And the virtual instruments really help me kind of make sure that what I'm orchestrating is coming across the way that I actually want it to. I have all these grouped here, but if I open them all up, you'll see it's quite a few tracks. Actually, some of these tracks aren't being used. I have like a template that I bring up and I leave everything in just in case, you know, I don't think there's any wood blocks on this, but maybe I want wood blocks, so I'm not going to delete that track. So this is what it looks like with all the tracks open. If you've watched my videos of stuff like this in the past, you've probably seen stuff like this. I'll play you a bit of how it sounds with just the programmed instruments. It's pretty amazing how good orchestral samples are. But as you'll hear when we go to the Pro Tools file, nothing replaces humans. Something that's interesting about this scratch file is that I demoed out all of the choir parts myself, which gets kind of interesting towards the end. It's pretty high, probably shouldn't be allowed to do that. One of the textures I love in this song is the typewriter in verse 2 that's about Father Mackenzie working on his sermon. I just thought it'd be cool to have something rhythmic that kind of represents the writing. And then obviously typewriter occurred to me. There's a composer named Leroy Anderson that has a really famous piece for typewriter and orchestra. But really where the idea came to me is from like my favorite film score of all time, which is Dario Marianelli's score for the movie Atonement, and he uses rhythmic typewriter in that a lot, and it is such a cool texture. So I didn't actually record a typewriter, believe it or not. I found this virtual instrument that is a typewriter. Lots of like, you know, bell sounds, and so I just played it in. You can hear it. So it's fake, but it sounds really good. So just left it in, and that is actually the final typewriter. The other reason that programming the instruments in comes in handy is because sometimes you need to like kind of pump up the real instruments. Like for example, like here's a bass drum I use. It's called Darwin something, but it's like really bassy and verby. Typical concert bass drums don't sound like that, but when you can layer that in with the concert bass drum that we actually recorded, it gives you like that low end that you're maybe missing from the room mics or whatever. And so to layer that stuff in and have it at the ready, once you record the real instruments, you kind of like, okay, you know, we could use a bit more of like the crash cymbals, and then you have that stuff you can kind of mix in when you need it. If you have any questions or I missed something that you want me to cover, like throw questions in the comments. I try to like check every now and then. I love kind of nerding out about this stuff with people. So make my day, leave a comment with a question about orchestration or whatever. I love talking about this stuff. So for the choir, back in finale, I wrote everything out and I did it in a way that was just basically like chunks where people are singing, so there wasn't a lot of rests. And I created kind of a cues and click file that everyone listened to and then just sang along with their phones or recording setup or whatever they had. So you'll see like letter A, letter B, and I would count people into those sections with kind of a lightened orchestration because I didn't want to give away the full thing. Stuff like this, you know, the dynamic notations. I know many of you who are musicians will be like, duh, you got to put that in. But it's like, if you're recording remote and you don't have me there to say, hey, could you kind of swell on this note? You can write that right in finale, and then people know like, oh, I see what he wants in this moment. When way more people responded to this than I had imagined, here are all of their files. My friend Garrett Mosher put them all into a Pro Tools file for me. He edited them and kind of got them all together, and this is what that looks like. I'll open up all these folders. It's going to take me a minute. Oh my gosh, so many tracks. So this is what the choir file looks like. And I bet you're wondering, Cody, did you actually use every file? Yes. Went through every file. Every file we received is in here. You'll see some of them are muted in spots, and some of them are turned down because if some people had like lots of room noise and stuff that kind of couldn't be used. We just turned that way down. 394 tracks. A lot of people submitted multiple files, which I was just like, you guys are the best people of all time. Let's play back a little. I love this section here, the way it turned out.
2, 1.
There's me counting them in. It's a really surprisingly good sound, honestly. I mean, it's really pretty good for, you know, 300 some people across the globe recording themselves and all sorts of different things. When you put it all together, it's kind of amazing. So if you were part of the choir, thank you. I like cannot say thank you enough. And truly, I was just stunned at how good this came out. So the last step is to always get it into Pro Tools. This particular session was on a different day than everything else, and it was with a 60-piece string section, which is by far the largest section I've ever recorded. And then the winds were on a different day and the percussion was on a different day. So see the yellow here, that's all the winds. The blues are percussion, and then this purple here, that's all the strings. Oh, and we also recorded real harp, which I don't do super often. I would really like to do it more. Here's a little bit of the real harp. Such a great sound. It's great. Oh man, recording music is so much fun. And I also don't record percussion super often. It was actually really cool. Here's a little bit of that. So you can hear marimba in there. It's just kind of one of those textures that fits in with the woodwinds and kind of plays that same motif that they're developing. Here's some of the winds. It's a great sound. Here's a bit of the ending with the winds. I just like this part. I love the little flute throws. Very John Williams. It's one of my biggest inspirations. And since we haven't heard any of the strings yet, let's listen to some of that. Here's one of those textures in the strings that is something that you can write on the paper, but it's kind of hard to sample unless you have the really specific samples, which basically just them playing a single note, but with like really wide and slow vibrato, and then you'll hear kind of that contrabass glissando downwards towards the end. It's kind of really gross. Angry bees or something. Let's listen to a bit of the full orchestra without my vocal here. Oh man, I just want to fall asleep in those chords. Brass in now. Push all the way through to 1. Yeah. You won't see the choir in this file because the choir was actually added after it had already been sent to mix, so I just sent the mixing engineer those files separately. Only 4 files. I sent him SATV files, not all the files. I think he would file a lawsuit against me if I sent him all those files. If you watched the score video, you might have seen my explanation of what I wanted to try to achieve with the end, which is basically create these simple chord changes, but then write this melody that is sort of like not in rhythm and not really in the chord changes. It sort of like is struggling to find its place. And not only that, but it keeps going up in octaves and different things are sort of helping it along. The strings are staggering their chord movements so that like, it's like you can never kind of feel where things are gonna land. And you have all that tension that's just bottled up, and then that final string chord is just like shaking you by the shoulders. I love that. And so beautifully performed by these musicians. A lot of people don't know that when studio musicians play this stuff, this is like the 2nd or 3rd time they've ever played it, right? Like we do one take, see how it sounds, make a couple adjustments, do a few more, and then move on. So, I mean, it's just unbelievable how much musicality these players can get in on such a limited time frame. So that's Eleanor Rigby. Like I said, if there's something I didn't get into that you wanted to hear about, I'd love to like chat with you in the comments. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button. And thank you guys so much for, I don't know, listening to this song. It was such a fun project to work on, especially with the choir and like kind of seeing people send in their files and be a part of this. It was so much fun. It felt like this weird little community we had created just for this little moment of art. This was one of the most gratifying things I've ever put together. Just, I'm super happy that I get to make stuff like this. And it's because of you guys. So thank you for caring. That's all, I guess. See you next time.